Every night at 9:12 p.m., James Carter boarded the same train home, same route, same seat, same exhausted passengers trying to forget the day behind them. But one night, he noticed her. A woman sitting alone, still, silent, staring out the window like she was waiting for something that would never come. But the longer James watched her, the more he realized something was off. She didn't shift her weight. She didn't adjust her scarf. She didn't even blink. She sat there like a figure carved from shadow, placed with purpose, waiting to be noticed. James tried to look away, but his eyes kept drifting back. There was a heaviness around her, a quiet pull, like a whisper he couldn't quite hear. The train rattled along the tracks, city lights smearing across the windows, passengers half asleep and lost in their screens. But she remained perfectly still, untouched by the motion around her. A chill crept up James's neck. Not fear, not yet, just the sense that this woman wasn't another commuter, that she didn't belong to this train, or maybe even this moment. And deep down, he felt she was waiting for him, and whatever she wanted to say, he wasn't ready to hear. The next night, she was there again, same seat, same clothes, same expression, frozen between sadness and fear. James tried not to stare, but something about her felt wrong, like she wasn't really part of the train at all. James felt his stomach tighten as he watched her sit in that exact same position, as if she had never left the train at all. The lights flickered overhead, casting thin shadows across her pale face, but she didn't react, not even a flinch. Passengers shuffled in and out, brushing past her without so much as a glance, like she was invisible to everyone but him. The air around her felt colder tonight, heavier, as though the space she occupied didn't belong to the living. James tried to convince himself it was coincidence, but deep down, he knew better. Whatever she wasn't just another commuter. By the third night, James couldn't pretend it was a coincidence. She didn't blink, she didn't move, she didn't even breathe, and when the train hit a sharp turn, everyone shifted in their seats, everyone except her. When the train pulled into his stop, James stood to leave, but as he stepped onto the platform, he felt it, a cold breath on the back of his neck. He turned. She was standing in the doorway, staring directly at him. James froze, his breath catching as the night air wrapped around him like a warning. She hadn't moved the entire ride, yet now she stood inches from the threshold, her pale face framed by the flickering train lights, her eyes locked onto his with a depth that felt ancient and unbearably sad. The other passengers brushed past without noticing her, their footsteps echoing across the platform, but to James it felt like the world had gone silent. Her presence pressed against him, cold, heavy, deliberate, as if she had followed him not out of curiosity, but necessity. She opened her mouth like she was trying to speak, but no sound came out, just a trembling breath, a warning trapped behind silent lips. James stood rooted to the platform, watching her struggle against some invisible barrier, her lips forming shapes that never became words. Her eyes glistened with a desperate urgency, as if she were fighting time itself just to reach him. The cold around her deepened, pressing against his skin like a winter wind that didn't belong to the night. Every instinct in him screamed to run, yet he couldn't move, not while she looked at him like he was the only person who could understand. Whatever she was trying to say, whatever truth she carried, it was clear she needed him to hear it, even if she couldn't speak it. James told himself he was imagining things, stress, lack of sleep, too many late nights at the office, but deep down, he knew something was following him. He moved through his apartment like a man trying to outrun his own thoughts, dropping his bag by the door, loosening his tie, splashing cold water on his face, anything to shake the image of her standing in that train doorway. But every reflection, every shadow in the corners of his dimly lit home seemed to echo her stillness. The silence pressed in around him, thick and unnatural, as if the world were holding its breath. James tried to convince himself it was exhaustion, nothing more, yet the weight in his chest told a different story. Whatever she was, whatever she wanted, it hadn't stayed on the train. He promised himself he wouldn't look for her. But the moment he stepped onto the train, his eyes went straight to her seat. And there she was, waiting. James felt his chest tighten as their eyes met, or rather, as her empty gaze settled somewhere through him, past him, like she was watching a moment he hadn't lived yet. She sat in the exact same posture, hands folded neatly in her lap, her long dark hair unmoving despite the draft rolling through the car. The other passengers bustled around her, oblivious, their conversations and footsteps muffled beneath the weight of her presence. James swallowed hard, realizing he hadn't come here by habit tonight. He'd come because some part of him needed to know why she kept appearing and why she kept waiting for him. For the first time, she moved, just her hand, slowly lifting, pointing at him, not accusing, not threatening, warning. James felt the blood drain from his face as her trembling hand rose with unnatural slowness, her finger locking onto him like she was singling him out from the rest of the world. The air around her seemed to thicken, bending the light just enough to make her outline waver, as if she were caught between here and somewhere far darker. Her eyes held a sorrow so deep it felt ancient, a silent plea that tightened around his chest. She wasn't trying to scare him. He could feel that now. She was trying to reach him, to pull him toward a truth she could no longer speak. The train lights flickered, the world around him blurred, and suddenly, James wasn't on the train anymore. He was somewhere else, someone else. The air seemed to fold in on itself, colors smearing into white streaks as the hum of the train dissolved into a distant echo. James felt weightless, suspended between moments, as if time had slipped its grip on him. The seats, the passengers, even the cold metal beneath his feet melted away until he stood in a hazy, shifting space that pulsed with memories not his own. A faint warmth brushed past him, carrying the scent of old perfume and something burnt, and he realized he was being pulled into a moment that didn't belong to the present, a moment she needed him to see. He saw her, alive, laughing with friends on the same train years ago, a normal night, a normal commute, until the train hit a broken section of track, and everything went black. James watched the memory unfold like a film projected through fog, the warm lights, the easy laughter, the subtle sway of the train as it carried them through an ordinary evening. The woman looked so alive, her smile soft and unguarded, her gray coat draped loosely around her shoulders as she leaned into her friends. Then the world jolted, metal screamed, sparks burst like dying stars, the lights snapped out, plunging everything into chaos. James felt the terror in the air, the sudden drop in gravity, the violent shudder of a moment that should have never happened. And in that collapsing instant, he understood. This was the night she never escaped. She didn't survive. Her life ended in the wreckage, but her spirit never left the train. Trapped in the moment she died, trapped in the seat where she took her last breath. James felt the weight of her final moments press against him, the memory lingering like smoke from a fire long extinguished. He could almost hear the distant echo of twisted metal settling, the faint whisper of her last breath suspended in the cold air, the image of her lifeless body in that seat, the same seat she occupied every night, carved itself into his mind with chilling clarity. She hadn't stayed behind out of vengeance or confusion. She was bound to the place where her story ended, caught in a loop she could never escape. And now, for reasons he didn't yet understand, she had chosen to reveal that truth to him. James felt the truth settle over him like ice. She wasn't haunting him. She wasn't following him. She wasn't lost. She was trying to save him. A cold realization rippled through him, sharper than fear, heavier than disbelief. Every silent stare, every night she appeared in that same seat, every moment she reached for him, it all aligned with a clarity that made his breath falter. She hadn't been clinging to the past. She had been reaching into his future. Her presence wasn't a curse, but a warning, a desperate attempt to pull him away from something he couldn't yet see. And as her sorrowful eyes held his, James understood that whatever fate had trapped her on that train, she was fighting to make sure it didn't claim him too. She showed him the tracks ahead, a vision of twisted metal, screams, flames, a train, his train, derailing just like hers. Tonight, James felt the vision slam into him like a physical force, the world around him erupting into fire and metal as the future unfolded with terrifying clarity. He saw passengers thrown from their seats, sparks raining down like burning snow, the train buckling as if the earth itself had opened beneath it. The sound, the grinding, tearing, human panic echoed through him long after the image faded. His breath hitched as the truth settled in his bones. This wasn't a distant possibility or a symbolic warning. It was a countdown, and he was running out of time. She looked at him with pleading eyes, not asking for help, not asking for justice, just begging him to get off the train before it was too late. James froze under her gaze, the world around them fading into a low, distant hum. Her eyes weren't angry or vengeful. They were terrified, shimmering with a warning she couldn't speak. The lights flickered, the air tightened, and for a heartbeat, he felt the weight of her death pressing against him, urging him to move. She wasn't asking him to save her. She was trying to save him. And in that silent, desperate stare, he understood that staying on the train meant sharing her fate. The train slowed for the next stop. James didn't hesitate. He ran, stumbled onto the platform, and when he turned back, the train doors closed. The woman was gone, and the train rolled into the darkness. James stumbled onto the platform, breath sharp in the cold air as the doors slid shut behind him. He spun back toward the train, searching for her, that still, sorrowful figure, but the seat was empty. The train lurched forward, its lights flickering as it slipped into the tunnel, swallowed by darkness. He stood frozen, realizing she had stayed behind so he could walk away. An hour later, James heard the sirens, saw the smoke rising in the distance. The news confirmed what she tried to tell him. The train derailed. There were no survivors. James watched the distant emergency lights pulse against the night sky, smoke rising in slow, heavy plumes. The sirens carried the truth before the news did. The vision she showed him had come to pass. The train was gone. Everyone on it was gone, and he was alive only because she made sure he stepped off. James never saw her again, but every night when he passes the station, he looks at the empty tracks and whispers a quiet thank you to the woman who never left the train. Sometimes he pauses there, letting the cold night air settle around him, listening to the distant hum of trains he'll never board again. The platform is always empty, the tracks silent, yet he feels her presence in the stillness, a soft reminder of the night she chose his life over her own. He doesn't expect her to return, doesn't look for signs or shadows. The thank you is enough. It's all he can offer the ghost who saved him.